Okay, so here is an example, and I'll attach this rag that I've completed for the article. But before I go over the rag, I want to go over my markings of the article. So I've used Diigo, Diigo. It's an add-on or extension you can find at the Chrome store. I've used it to highlight, and I've used green for ethos, blue for logos, and pink for pathos, and yellow for my claim. So as I was reading through, I read through first, and I kept reading through saying, okay, well, all this stuff up here, like first we have details and logos, but we don't really have a claim. In the second paragraph, we have logos, but still no claim. They're giving examples, they're giving details, they're giving statistics. So I'm understanding the issue without a fully stated claim, which means it leaves me to imply a claim. So stopping there, I ended up knowing it had something to do with them being unhappy with how this government was handling infringements. Then if we move to the third paragraph, I have coded this as logos because that's all details and statistics and, 3,300 residents in 2010 and 2,255 non-traffic tickets. So it's just a bunch of details, which builds logos. Details and logos tend to build one upon the other. Ludicrous was diction. And then we've got some imagery here. Infractions having holes in the windows, and it describes them. So that could be details or that could be imagery. I guess it's maybe a little bit more details than it is imagery because it doesn't talk about colors and word sensory. So I'm actually going, now that I read that with you all, I'm going to change that also to blue. The entire city is like homeowners association from hell. So that's a hyperbole that, or a simile and a hyperbole actually. And because that is a simile and hyperbole, I can make that pink because that creates pathos. And cough up the dough is an idiom, and that also builds pathos. Moving down to the next paragraph, it's logos and details. And then at the end here, it mentions the 14th Amendment due process clause, and that would be actually ethos. And then we move into more pathos. It uses its residents like walking ATMs. So that'd be hyperbole, simile would work there as well. And this town should prompt us to examine the code of enforcement and government micromanagement in our own towns. Laws shouldn't be narrowly tailored to protect people and property, and fines should be reasonable. So that's basically the claim, that we need to re-examine what's happening in our towns. My assertion was that they're desperate to raise revenue, so they're stating like there's an ulterior motive. And then it talks about the infractions, the holes in the window screens, etc. So it talks about all of that. I've listed logos as a primary appeal, and the way I can figure that out is if I just skim through, obviously everything I've coded is blue. I mean, a majority of my stuff is blue. And then I can be like, oh, obviously I've got logos here. And I just brought the strongest logos, which was the one that I kind of read aloud already with all the details and specifics of the town. Then we move down, and there's several things, like as I mentioned, there's similes, there's hyperboles, there's diction, there's details. So I used ludicrous as diction. How does this affect the reader's thinking? So the word ludicrous, whenever you're talking about diction, it is only a single word. The word ludicrous has a negative connotation that develops a negative tone regarding the subject. This allows the reader to recognize the author's opinion of the issues being discussed. I might even change this to disgusted tone, because that allows us to have a specific tone stated. Instead of negative or positive, you always want to state a very specific tone. Then I called the Pagedale treats its citizens like walking ATMs, hyperbole and simile. And this affects the reader's thinking. The hyperbole develops pathos in order to build reader sympathy for its residents in this town and others that have overzealous community administration. So the purpose here is to build sympathy by using pathos. And then the detail, 2009 Missouri law prevented them from raising 30% of the general fund. How does that detail change the thinking of the reader? This detail is used in order to, and you'll notice I've put in order to through most of my explanations. In order to is a really good way to get to effectiveness, to get away from the what and get to the why. And that goes for any type of analysis, whether it's literary or rhetorical. It explains the reason that the problem began. It provides background for the reader in order to understand the agenda behind and the motives behind. So in order to is a really good commentary filler to use. The tone I said is a defensive tone, that the entire city is like a homeowners association from hell. That's the quote that I used. And then I'll let you guys read for yourself. However, I want you to make note that I did cut and paste, so that's why certain things are colored on this rag. But I did start with the author and title. So that's something specific to take a note of, is that I started with the author and title. I'm not going to, I just bold it so you can see it. I used evidence. They used a hyperbole, and then I embedded my quotes. So embedding quotes, allowing for starting with the author and title is always the start. Embedding my quotes. Telling this is effective, so explaining the effectiveness. And again, in order to is always something, that's a really good way to shift from the what's to the whys. And in some of the practice feedback, I did put that often. And then also addressing the claim. So this conveys like the basic claim, and I kind of end with that. It is effective in the claim, and state the claim. All right, so I will make sure that you guys have access to this, and hopefully your rag looks similar to this. You don't have to have the exact same devices I had. Hopefully you have imagery and details. There is that one of diction, an idiom, hyperbole. All of those would be ones that I would use.